We like to believe being human means understanding ourselves, that somewhere beneath the routine, the habits, and the contradiction, there's a clear definition of who we are. But in Resident Alien, that assumption gets flipped completely. And the truth is, most of what we call normal is never questioned. It's just accepted. Not because it makes sense, but because we've never had to see it from the outside looking in. And maybe the most uncomfortable question isn't whether we are flawed, but whether we'd even recognize those flaws if someone else was the one observing us. And sometimes it takes a perspective that doesn't belong to us to finally expose what we've been too close to see. But because in this world, humanity isn't defined by what we believe ourselves to be, but by how we're perceived when stripped of every excuse we hide behind. Where judgment becomes clearer from a distance, where curiosity turns into dissection, and where the very thing we take for granted, connection, emotion, legacy, becomes the only reason we might be worth understanding at all. Not because we're perfect, but because we're confusing in ways nothing else is. So let's step into Resident Alien and confront what humanity looks like when it's no longer seen through human eyes. Chapter 1. Curiosity versus Judgment. How would humans be judged for the actions we make when we don't even fathom what most people next door are even doing? What would an alien's reaction be to seeing us humans as anomaly beings, observed one at a time? For most of us, we're taught to embrace individualism, to embrace ourselves so that the world can accept us. That word, accept, is the key reason why we function as a society. We judge each other, yet we also accept that we're just as weird, if not worse, than the people we're judging in most instances. However, imagine superior beings from outer space, creatures who may be monitoring us through their own version of surveillance. What kind of conversations are they having? Are they curious about us as specimens, or are they judging us for the absurdity of how fractured we are as a community? And what if that judgment is already happening? A neighbor nearby, or someone across the street from you, could be an alien taking on a human form, trying to figure out what it means to be human. That is what the series explores. Once Harry enters the community of Patience, Colorado, he's forced to confront what on earth humanity actually is. For someone like Harry, an alien species that has evolved in ways much different from us, humans become the subject to study and try to understand. It becomes a comical analysis of the human race, judging from the point of view of a character who isn't human. Through direct internal monologues, we hear the questions Harry asks, the actions he has to take as a human, and his outright commentary on the strange human behaviors. When we hear those observations through his internal monologues, we begin to ask the same questions. Yet, when we see those same behaviors in real life, we rarely question them, we simply accept them. That is the line of what it means to be an observer, or perhaps the most questionable anomaly game show in the entire galaxy, the existence of human beings. And as much as we understand this as viewers of the series, there are moments when, once presented to us through a third-person perspective, we find ourselves asking the same questions, either out of curiosity or out of judgment for every spiteful instinct we have. Chapter 2. Small-Town Power Structures. There is a small irony in where Harry landed on Earth. It wasn't a metropolitan city like New York or Los Angeles, but a small town, a place where everyone knows each other and where any sense of individual personality can easily be noticed. From the moment he arrives, everyone notices Harry, not because he's an alien, but because he fails to display the common traits that most humans share. Instead, he's a being whose only human reference point comes from watching all 20 seasons of Law & Order and nothing else. From that comes an interesting notion of how small towns really operate. They function almost like a singular organism, working as one, constantly trying to maintain the perfect mirage of a community. It's hard, even impossible, to disappear, to fade into the fog and be forgotten by everyone in a small town. No matter how much you wish you could, you will always be exposed in some way, being forced to participate in sharing cultural understanding. Eventually, as Harry begins to blend into this community, he also begins to behave the ways the community does. Because people in town are far more open with each other, he finds it easier to observe what it truly means to be human. They are not confined to an isolated bubble of their own individual world. This becomes one of the main reasons Harry manages to understand human behavior to the extent that he does. In a small town, no one can hide their inner self. They're forced to live at a pace where the town must accept that they're different because there is nothing to hide from it. We see the contrast when Harry enters a big city. It isn't simply that he's as awkward as he was in Patience. He just can't navigate it. He becomes easily lost in a world that was never meant to be stable enough to accommodate him. In Patience, the noise was never truly there, even when the chaos existed. The kind of overwhelming noise that defines urban environments, something that constantly distracts people, was absent. Because of that, Harry was able to observe humanity in a much more natural and realistic way. Chapter 3. The Irony of Secrets We Keep. It almost feels redundant to explain the concept of human keeping secrets. That has been a driving force across many of my analysis. But in this context, there is a real irony about the secrets that each individuals keep regarding the existence of aliens. The idea of who should know about what others should know is a valid concern. Truth, in essence, is a Pandora's box. While the saying, "the truth will set you free," holds weight, it also implies that what is set free may not always lead to order. It can just as easily create immediate and widespread chaos. And the idea of keeping secrets about aliens is, to be fair, valid. Simply saying, "I believe in aliens," can make someone seem like a conspiracy nut trying to expose the government. Yet the reality is that the main characters in the series all knew about the aliens, some on a surface level, others much deeper. Still, they existed within a bubble, keeping those secrets confined to themselves and a small community. In many ways, in order for society to function normally, secrecy is the answer. And instead of choosing to live in a world where the notion of normalcy is just a mirage, we choose to preserve it for our own comfort's sake, because once the truth comes out, everything changes permanently. And when it does, it proves that secrets are, in a way, the only thing that is keeping society from cracking into anarchy. Everyone is entitled to their own secrets, if only to prevent the Pandora's box from causing the kind of damage that could lead to a global catastrophe. When humanity is viewed as little more than lab subjects by higher galactic beings, secrecy becomes a unifying force, something that binds everyone together, all because we choose comfort over hardship. No one is ever truly honest, not humans, not Harry, not the Greys, and especially not the Mantid. The evolution of secrecy becomes a survival mechanism, allowing each of them to continue living without the burden of guilt. And that is the real irony of secrets. Keeping secrets isn't really about ethics or morality. Instead, it reflects something deeper about us than truth ever could. Truth can be a hard pill to swallow, but secrets, they can be shaped, protected, even rewritten if necessary, all in the name of preserving peace. Chapter 4. The Illusion of Human Nobility. We humans think we have it all figured out, that we're morally justified beings who knows better through the notion of critical thinking and evolution we have gone through to make it to where we are. And on an individual level, there might be some truth to that. But let's take a look at it from a holistic level, where we strip away the notion of humans observing humans and instead imagine some foreign entity observing us. That's when we start to see the cracks. When we as human beings are the ones telling the story, and I'm just as guilty of this in my own videos, we present a moral framework that could easily be seen as hypocritical when viewed through another lens. That's why stories that forces us to think as if we aren't humans makes for such a compelling narrative. We're finally being stress tested, often to the detriment of our own feelings, and it reveals something uncomfortable. We don't actually have everything figured out. Instead, we operate within a sense of order that makes it feel like everything is on the right path, as if the noise around us is just an illusion. Through the eyes of many aliens in the series, we see humans confronting the very trait we claim to have matured beyond. And even when the lens shifts onto the aliens themselves, when we spot their flaws and judge them, we're only mirroring the same indifference they show towards humanity. We think we're superior simply because there is nothing on Earth that fundamentally challenges that belief. That assumption then becomes justification for infights and pettiness, all under the idea that it will somehow lead back to human nobility. But that very mindset becomes the foundation for beings like Harry to judge us as deeply flawed, so imperfect that we may not even be capable of coexisting with another race across the galaxy. Chapter 5: Loneliness as the Universal Language. As much as the show judges the human race for its hypocritical point of view on their superiority, there is one theme across the series that seems to not just reflect the human race, but every alien race across the universe. Perhaps in this department, the human race has managed to figure things out as best as they could compared to any other race so far. The concept of relationships is one that we all know too well. Familial, friendship, and romantic relationships all become the answer to our meaning in life. And as we start to learn more about how Harry observes the human race, we begin to see that this feeling of being alone, of life feeling meaningless without connection, is a universal language shared across every human, every alien, every hybrid across the galaxy. All of this points to the idea that the drive for connection and relationships is perhaps the most human thing of all. In many instances, the aliens from other planets never seems to figure that out either. It becomes a defining thread across the entire series, and it makes Harry's upbringing as an alien especially tragic. Yes, he was sent to Earth on a mission to destroy it, but when we learn about the cultures and practices of his home planet, his race preferring solitude over community, and being raised solely by survival instinct, it says something important. Even though humans are far from perfect, the aliens across the galaxies are not perfect either. Just like Harry, we're judging these characters and their stories, but unlike his singular outside perspective, we as the audience can balance the viewpoint. We can compare and contrast, and in doing so, we begin to see that loneliness is not just an epidemic on Earth, it is a universal one. And that realization becomes its own message, suggesting that there is something we are meant to learn from it. Chapter 6: The Ending. If humanity is fully seen, does it still deserve to survive? The concept of legacy becomes an interesting notion for humanity to hold, not because we don't want old traditions to fade out, but because we as humans have this grand desire to keep it alive, to be seen. But then the question really becomes, when are we truly seen? Not through the lens of humanity that we as the audience and the characters are constantly exposed to, but through a different perspective. What if it was a holistic sight, seen not by us, but by them? Then, would we as humans feel any different about wanting to course correct on our actions? Because in some ways, we are guilty and ashamed of being humans. That becomes a sinking question as we watch Harry observe humanity. His mission in this sector of the galaxy was clear: target Earth, exterminate humanity, and reduce the planet to nothing. But then, he began to understand us. After countless misperceptions he had about human beings, he finally saw the messiness and the complexity of being humans, after grilling us and judging us as if he were a superior being all along. Then came more aliens, the Greys, who wanted to make Earth habitable for their race, knowing they wouldn't survive in Earth's atmosphere. They were willing to destroy Earth just to make it theirs. Yet, even among them, the concept of humanity and Earth attracted some of them. It interested them. They didn't want to be part of this strange chess game of reshaping the planet, but instead wanted to appreciate the legacies that was already there. The irony in all of this is that the idea of legacy, what you leave behind, becomes the most important lesson of all. It is the very reason why, even after successfully integrating into human society, Harry struggled to understand what he's feeling. That unfamiliar tug on his heart, the thing that makes him care about the people he meets, is something entirely new to him. And that same phenomenon becomes the turning point. It's why other alien races begins to question their assumptions about humanity, because there's one anomaly they can't fully comprehend, what we might call the soul. Compared to the other species shown throughout the series, humanity is far less technologically advanced. To them, we're like ants building a new colony, small, primitive, and easy to overlook. But what they fail to grasp is the emotional depth, this capacity to care and connect, may be the very thing that makes humanity worth saving. But humanity shows something no other alien race has: the courage to carry legacy forward. The courage to preserve what it means to be human, generation after generation, to understand what love means, what family means. These are things left behind through legacy, and no matter how imperfect humanity is, judged harshly for our lack of competence in so many areas these galactic beings will criticize, it is precisely the thing they don't understand that draws them closer to us. And maybe that's what makes it so difficult to answer, because when humanity is fully seen, stripped of every illusion we hide behind, what's left isn't entirely good or entirely flawed, just something that continues to exist in ways we don't fully understand. Maybe humanity doesn't survive because it's good, but because it keeps going anyways.